Too often, we only see what's going on the surface of a man. We see the clothes on his back, we see the car he drives, yet we never really understand their story. We never really know what's going on deep down inside. I mean, we even ask, "Hi, how you doing today?" But do we truly care? The question has even become so routine that the answer is almost always, "I'm okay," or "I'm fine," even when we're not. Now don't get me wrong, we all have stories. Ours are just a little more complicated. So I present to you Untold Stories of Black Men. Enjoy. I grew up on the south side of St. Petersburg. I remember I was 16. I had just bought my first car. It was a 1984 Dodge Colt, and it was a stick shift. There was this girl I met at the beach, and we started dating, but the only problem was she lived in Tarpon Springs. And Tarpon Springs was like an hour and a half north of St. Pete. I remember one night my friend Cece and I, we drove out to Tarpon Springs to go meet up with her and her friend. After the movie, Cece and I, we left to go back home. It was about 12 in the morning. And as we drove and laughed about everything that happened that night, I remember looking up and looking in my rearview, and I realized we were being pulled over. So I remember pulling into an abandoned gas station off the side of the road. This was the first time I've ever been pulled over before. I reached to turn off the car. I realized that I didn't put the car in. I didn't leave it in gear, and I didn't put the emergency brake on. So when I turned the car off and took my foot off the brake, the car rolled back. After I turned the car off and I pulled the e-brake, I look out my driver window and I look over, and this officer has his flashlight and his gun pointed at me. And I look over at Cece's side on the passenger side, and there's another officer with the same thing. He's got his flashlight and his gun drawn, pointing at the car. I remember just being so afraid. I was just in such a haze, I couldn't even hear the officer. It was like the teachers talking in Charlie Brown. It's like everything was in slow motion. I guess everything was just so unreal that was happening at the moment. I just zoned out. And so when I finally came to, and I could hear his demand, he was screaming, "Put your hands up, put your hands up." All while the gun's pointed at the car with the flashlight. So I couldn't even really see him. I could see a gun and I could see a flashlight. Cece and I stepped out the car, and as we looked around, only to find there were 6 other officers behind us, guns drawn. I was 16, and I was looking down the barrel of a gun for the first time because they say I was speeding. They told us to sit on the curb, and I think I remember an officer saying, "Do you mind if I search your vehicle?" I didn't have anything to hide, so I was like, "Sure." I was like, "Go ahead, search my vehicle." So we're sitting on the curb, and I'm watching this officer go through my car. I remember just being so scared and afraid and just confused, and I couldn't understand to be looking down the barrel of a gun. I can't tell you how fast my heart was racing. I can't tell you, like, I almost couldn't breathe. It was just all the emotions that were going through me. After searching my car, the officer calls me over and he begins to explain to me why he used so much force. It was at that point I realized that he did something wrong, or he broke protocol or something. Because why else would you explain to me after all of this? He said to me, "The reason I pulled you all over with so much force is I don't know you. I don't know what you have in that car. I want to come home to my family. I got to protect myself." So you mean to tell me that at 16, I struck so much fear into 8 officers' heart that they felt the need to pull us over and hold us at gunpoint? At 16. No, I get it. It must have been the car, right? Surely anyone driving a 1984 Dodge Colt, they must be dangerous. I never got a ticket that night. He let me go with a warning, as if he was doing me a favor, as if he was giving me a shot after holding us at gunpoint. Cece and I drove home in complete silence for the rest of the ride. When we got to school that Monday morning, We didn't even speak of it. We kind of just accepted it for what it was and kind of kept going. We kind of never really dealt with it or put it aside or really dealt with the emotions that came from that night. I remember I parked my car for a whole week after that. I didn't even drive it. I didn't want to get behind the wheel of a car. Truth is, anytime I've gotten pulled over after that, even in adulthood, it takes me right back to that moment. It takes me right back to that night, right back to that spot. And the same fear comes right back up anytime I get pulled over. My name is Lee T. Hart, and this is my story.